Hey there, welcome to episode 114 of the FFS Talk audio program. I am your host, Dan Hugo. We're recording this at 2:53 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Thursday, January 29, 2026. We normally publish on Thursdays, sometimes earlier in the day than this, but not too bad. Busy week, as always. Today's title and topic, Rollback. Or maybe undo if you prefer, but rollback. It's more unusual. If this is your first time listening to the FFS Talk audio program, welcome. The idea with this program is to have debate, discussion, argument, to roll over ideas, not roll them back, and see what works, what doesn't, and what we might do about it. I will say that this is the 114th episode where I am the only one speaking. I have to be honest, I have not really proactively reached out for guests. It's so much easier to just make your own monologue. But I actually prefer to think of this as seeds planted for future discussions. Of course, at some point, you can only say that so many times before it becomes too many times. I anticipate having actual guests on in sort of a video format so that the interaction can have some nonverbal components, I suppose. But the audio programs, hey, maybe you're listening to this on a treadmill or while you're out walking or who knows what. If you're performing surgery right now, don't forget to get that last suture in there. The FFS Talk audio program will indeed invite guests at some point. Or, hey, if you really want to join in and you're itching to cover one of the previous topics, there are so many. Let me know. The email address, it should be in the RSS feed, but if you email me, you'll reach me. By the way, if you're not familiar, if you are able to locate this episode wherever you found it, which hopefully you were, wherever you get your audio programs, there is hopefully you're able to locate the episode description. Really, when you get right down to it. That will contain the show notes, including a summary of today's episode, which is kind of one long sentence this time. I will read it. And then the links, I only have the usual channel links, homepage, profile page. So we'll get to that in a second. So yeah, welcome to the show. If this is your first time listening, there are many more to select from for your second and then eventually 113th listen. So let's get started so we get finished. Summary, we are not talking about databases with the title of the show, but there is a concept in databases where a change set can either be committed for all to see or rolled back to make the change set but a memory that need not be seen by anyone. If only such things were possible in the real world. Ellipsis. And of course, some things are possible in the real world along these lines, thanks to the backspace or delete keys. The links for today's episode, as they are for all episodes of FFS Talk, the FFS Talk homepage, ffstalk.com. Eventually, that will be the primary point of publication. Eventually, it will look nice. I honestly have spent almost no time on there. Very, very, very little web traffic, so chicken and egg, right? I'll get that working. We're attempting to put together a Smarter Smart City challenge for Greater Vegas. I'm really hoping we get over 1,000 participants. So I don't want to say I'm too busy, but the to-do list has suffered. And as well, the profile page linking everything. That is my buymeacoffee.com/Dan Hugo profile page. It's a free-form link tree of sorts. It's coming up on 5 years. I registered, signed up, whatever, for buymeacoffee.com in March of 2021. Back when I was, I've been a podcaster for a long time, but in Vegas since then. You don't have to spend any money there, but there are links to all of the things. So you can check that out. Totally free. They're affiliate links, or you can actually buy me a coffee. No need. All funds through that, by the way, do go towards the purchase of coffee, which is what powers all of my various activities. Now, how did we get here? It is easy to go to the topic of the day every single day for this year, all the time, and we probably will touch on this. In fact, production by street. In fact, we will, because I know the future. But let us speak in the most general terms. At any given time, you may find yourself in a particular situation, whether stuck in traffic, searching for a new job, waiting in the ER with your hand elevated above your heart. You get the idea. Have you ever thought maybe a decision 10 minutes, an hour, 2 weeks, maybe years ago should maybe have gone another way? Believe it or not, there was a time when Control Z, hopefully you know what that is, did not exist. Then Command Z came along with the Mac, and at this point, the possibility of unsending. Let me fix one typo here. The possibility of unsending edits after posting something, sometimes a premium feature, marking accounts as private, unfriending. The list of possibilities of rolling back errors is a fact in the digital world, anyway. And in the media world, did you ever come across a time in a movie or a show series where the time travel card is played, applying a scripted undo to something earlier in the series or even before it? You know who you are, Star Trek fans, but also all the other ones. I mean, eventually, maybe is it bad writing? Not sure, but eventually, we need to fix something. We need to unkill someone. We need to. Yeah, anyway, there is going to be a reference to the current state of affairs. By the way, if anybody's troubled, that was a in-movie reference. There's no violence here. There's going to be a reference to the current state of affairs. You know what I am talking about. But generally speaking, one might wonder if the let's go back to the way things were mentality may be reinforced by the just undo it mentality, which surrounds us all the time on all sides. Maybe it is something in the quick examples I just gave earlier. Maybe a profoundly bad decision, perhaps a tragic event, or the downfall of a form of government for no good reason. Or maybe something else. So what works with rollback? If you can actually effectively undo, anyone familiar with tech history will recall the invention of VisiCalc for the Apple II computers initially. I don't know if it ever got ported to DOS, which maybe... It's funny that I don't know that, but immaterial, which ushered in the age of spreadsheets and office applications and all of the good and bad that came along with all of that. The important part, time and resources spent correcting typos, misspellings, incorrect numbers somewhere in a spreadsheet, and so on, could be largely redirected into more productive tasks. So the ability to undo mistakes or check your math, check your work, and fix it and so on, has been generally a positive. Pretty good for productivity, I think. Initially, I don't know how it's doing now, but anyone who's ever written with a fine mechanical pencil on a ledger, the classic green ledger with the little grid of, if you never had to do that anymore and you could fix errors, you could find errors more easily, kind of a game changer. So the ability to undo and redo, I guess, even better. Maybe before those times, whenever you were pursuing your education or you purchased something at a store, you might have had a do-over or return option. You turned in your homework, but more wrong than right left you with a try again in red ink, and maybe you could have that redo replace that first attempt. And I've been in those situations, not myself, but I mean, I've had teachers, professors who have that approach, like, hey, maybe this was just a bad day. Why don't you go ahead and try again? I don't remember ever encountering that. Of course, sometimes that happens with entire school years. These things happen. Whatever. And then similarly, if you purchased some item, maybe of clothing perhaps, and determined that it was not a good fit, not the right color, whatever the case, the return policy of the seller becomes suddenly important. And usually, in the end, there is a rolling back of the purchase, maybe a replacement item, or simply leaving the errant purchase behind with some sort of a credit. We end up with more successful students and happier customers often in these kinds of scenarios. So generally good. It's generally good to be able to undo or roll back events in the real world to the extent we're able. Now, extending the academic scenario even more, if we are able to undo or roll back a particular attempt at anything so that whatever we just did can be effectively erased, we can learn from errors or mishaps without repercussion. Yes, we can do this with the backspace or Z-based key combinations on our computers, but we can roll back and undo some things in the real world for the purposes of learning, improving, maybe perfecting. This might mean replacing the boxes, or I'm sorry, replacing, you'll get it in a second, the boxes or whatever your obstructions were while practicing parallel parking. Do people still do that? I don't even know anymore. Do cars just do that for you? But there would be a time when, in order to pass a driver's license test, the driver's test, you would need to parallel park your car at least once. And so you got to practice that. So if you can bump into a box or a whatever you're using, maybe you have some extra traffic cones around that you came upon mysteriously. Being able to place those and bump into them, knock them over, in the pursuit of perfectly practiced parallel parking. That's a lot of peas. No carrots. This might be, so it might be replacing the boxes of parallel parking or getting some new ingredients if that cookie experiment goes wrong, and so on. So it's always possible, if you're for the purposes of learning or practicing your craft, as long as there's no permanent damage, which is a different thing entirely. But surely, there was a time when my grandmother was preparing a New York style cheesecake, a lot of cream cheese. I think there's 6 eggs that go into that. And it was determined while the cheesecake was cooking that the eggs probably were not right. So the cheesecake was something of a disaster, but there was plenty of time to go get some new eggs and start over. No one had to even know about it. So yeah, sometimes an undo can be effectively implemented. You just gotta just do it, as they say. Don't just undo it. Well, do both. Replacing. I don't know about the 10,000 hours theory. Have you ever heard that one? You should be able to learn some new skill in 10,000 hours of practice. But learning something almost always involves taking 1 or 2 steps back as we take additional steps forward. So yes, just undo it and then redo it, and then you are able to do it. What does not work? And I always have to stress this, if I don't do it in every episode, but these are my views. If you have differing views or different examples and so on, that's the whole point of this exercise, is to eventually have conversations and debates and arguments and so on. So what does not work? Well, first of all, there are some things that even a digital rollback or delete cannot really undo. Sometimes there is some real world impact, like moving a control rod or all of them in a reactor, or dumping molten steel on something or someone, or blowing up the dam, taking out large swaths of, or lesser catastrophes like hitting send on that fax to someone. Do people still fax? I don't know. To someone you should not have sent that to. I was going to say email, but then I'm going to say unsending email is a thing. But faxes, once they start going through, if you're in panic mode, you might think, how do I unsend? Just unplug it. But once the fax is sent, it's on a hard copy, probably, or digital fax exists. But either way, it is now somewhere else, almost physically. Like it's a copy, but still, you get the intent there, I hope. It sounds crazy, I know, but anytime you hear the same story over and over again about document redaction, for example, that's also in the news, and how it is possible to unredact the information after it is out in the wild, remember that there are countless real examples of humans not quite understanding the act of doing something incorrectly that cannot be undone. No rollbacks, no callbacks, no refunds. You have shared that information with the world. There's the redacted documents, usually from government offices, but just in general, people I've seen. It depends on how they did it, but I've seen cases where they literally just draw. Somehow they draw on the document, but the underlying text is still in the document. So visually it's redacted, but digitally 100% visible, right? I don't know what was the case in the most recent debacles, but this notion that people have that the paper equivalent, right? Like black bars over text, and then you copy that so that you can't, because you can see through paper, and so you can still see the underlying text sometimes. So you would want to make a copy probably. So yeah, people don't connect the reality of undoable things with the analogs of activities that are done in digital space. So yeah, you can unredact documents unless you actually remove the text from the document. You got to replace it with something else. Yeah, in fact, when you think about it, redaction in documents, instead of being black bars, should be character per character replacement with there's an ASCII that used for a block cursor. It's just a rectangle of all the dots on. So yeah, that would work. Why don't they just do that? You can digitally redact documents effectively and correctly. Yeah. And then if it's something like a Word document or similar, they have document revision history. So you got to make sure you get rid of that. So yeah, no rollbacks unless you are not careful. There are certain actions or maybe transactions in the real world or online that are actually intentionally one way. Casting a vote, for example, you shouldn't be able to do that more than once, and you shouldn't be able to change it after some. Actually, you just shouldn't be able to change it. And that's, I believe, the case, despite yet more news about that. Signing a contract, for example, is very, very difficult to reverse. That's sort of part of the game. Adding something to the blockchain or a blockchain. These are all things, and only a small subset, I'm sure, that cannot be reversed. Definitely not easily anyway. Not as dire as the first case. The issue arises when the real world consequences of something done online are not always immediately obvious, as in I just hit send. In the first case, I mean the first set of examples, these can happen. In this case, this collection of examples, these things do happen all the time. They make the news sometimes, not always with total understanding. You don't send out redacted documents by the millions all the time, but you do send out emails, and you might be completing cryptocurrency transactions or similar on a blockchain. These can become habitual and thus completely completed rote. Means you don't really think about it. You just kind of click. Oh, I should not have sent that. Whoopsie. By the way, have you ever unsent an email, a feature Google tried with their Gmail product starting a couple years ago? And in fact, it's still there. I checked. I don't think I've ever used it. You have some number of seconds. The default, by the way, is 5 seconds to undo the send action. Now, that's sort of a misnomer. It does not unsend per se, because that is not possible. Sending an email literally sends digital information to a different mail server somewhere else, possibly more than one, as it makes your message, your content, whatever it is, makes its journey to your recipient. So the information is physically going to another place, like the bits are transmitted. Okay, physically is a kind of a stretch, but the document information is physically somewhere else. As much as we can extend that notion to documents. So unsending for Google Mail literally holds it back for 5, 10, up to 30 seconds, I think it is. You select, but it is the default is 5 seconds. Hey, I can unsend. Oh, I guess not. It's been 5 seconds. So, but what happens is it's unsending it from where you clicked send. It's literally just waiting 5, 10, 20, 30 seconds before it sends it on. So it's pausing. It's kind of saying, are you sure? So it waits that number of seconds, and then it goes, and then you are unable to. By the way, I just learned this the other day. LinkedIn direct messages. If you send someone a direct message on LinkedIn, I do not care for that entire thing, but that's the way people communicate sometimes. You can edit your outgoing message for up to 60 minutes, and then you cannot. Kind of arbitrary. Actually connecting these previous two, the two examples of kind of groups of things that are not great when it comes to undoing, but substantially more extreme in some cases. Let us take the current state of the federal government. See, you knew I was going to make this one example, but don't worry, not too much. And its various moving parts in the U.S., coupled with the interactions between the U.S. and other countries, coupled with the perception of the U.S. on the world stage as perceived by, well, the rest of the world. It's a couple billion people, maybe as many as 8. There is talk of, at least at the earliest convenience, of a return to, I said of twice, there is talk of, at the earliest convenience, a return to the before times, undoing all of this, so to speak, going back to the way it was. Presumably in 2019, 2015, 2012? When? when were things okay? I would be okay with going back to 1993, actually. I mean, if we're doing it, might as well. But we're not actually going back. It's a rollback, a redo, an undo. These are fine. But anyone who has ever watched one of those time travel storylines that I mentioned earlier or referred to may recall you must change something in order to, change the future. So you have to actually change something. Otherwise, you're not really going back to the before times. You can imagine. So literally, we should go back to the way it was. Unless you got a time machine, you cannot. I'm not saying that the world would travel through time, but in some sort of equivalent, it could erase the present and its impact and replace 2029 with 2013? Rollbacks undo the current transaction if you're writing database queries. But what happened before it? Can you fix that? Not the series of decisions and events that brought the world to the point at which the rollback brings you. So in other words, there's a reason, no matter what it is, we don't even have to continue along the government path, but there's a reason the circumstances are what they are at this very moment. That traffic scenario I mentioned at the top of the show, the beginning, you're stuck in traffic. I should have used surface streets. That was a popular way in Phoenix, the grid with their always backed up freeways. Just take surface streets. You can go down 7th Street, 7th Avenue. You could go down 19th Avenue, whatever, right? So when you're doing that, like, can I just go back in time and change my decision? No, but you can move forward and not make the same mistake again. But why is it that you didn't take 19th Avenue? Well, maybe there's some construction there. Maybe there's some other, so you cannot simply undo the parts you don't like and say, we'll just go back to the way things were and everything will be fine. Well, they got to be the way they were through another series of events and decisions and whatnot. And then the way things were is what brought you to the way things are. It's not always so easy. And I think that gets lost on people in the era of, just delete your Twitter post. Everything will be fine. Well, that's rarely actually true, depending on the nature of it. If 20 million people saw it, deleting it's only going to make it's going to draw more attention. So yes, in this mindset of we'll just delete it, undo it, redo it, change it, edit it. You can't always do that, and you cannot so easily go back to the way things were. So what can we do? Well, first of all, rollbacks and undos and all of these are not bad. I don't want to make them sound like they're the end of the world. Not at all. Like many things, they must be used with intent and with the understanding of what can be rolled back and what cannot. Will there be a consequence? Will there be any consequences at all? Are there already? Have things already transpired that you cannot undo as part of your undo? And so on. Basically, is the undo or rollback worse than leaving it as it is? For better or worse, a lot more of what humans interact with is becoming like Git, rebasing versus merging. Now, you probably don't know what that is. What is going on here? Why do I need to care? But this is the mechanism of trying to undo damage done and so on. But you kind of have to know more than you maybe have paid attention to. Everybody wants to be able to edit a tweet. The history is stored beyond your control, even if it is deleted and so on. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes and so on and so on. Clarity, transparency, comprehension, all essential as things get more complicated and even complex. So it's attention to detail. Can I take back that transaction on the blockchain? No. How come? Well, let me explain to you how this works now that you've converted your life into using cryptocurrencies. Unfortunately. Can I go back? That's a good question. Then there are the redos, if we can call them that. We don't need to wander into politics. Take it to a personal level, a relationship of any kind, romantic or a friend or a colleague or whatever, a business idea, anything where we wish we could go back and try this again, making different decisions perhaps. So get back together or pivot. It is essential that all parties involved understand the reasons for the existing path leading to a place that was not desirable, that didn't work, so that trying again, getting back to where things were, returning to, quote, normal, may not actually be useful or practical or even possible. Sometimes, even often, the situation is such that moving forward with lessons learned is the only actual way and possibly the better way, and perhaps a similar or completely different way. We may discover this at scale in 3 years. We shall see. Okay, that was one final little mention. But yeah, I think there's always this notion like, let's, get back together. Hey, let's continue trying to save this sinking ship of business or personal or whatever it is. Yeah, it is the undo mentality. We'll just go back to, we'll just forget this ever happened, that kind of stuff. And that's rarely the way things actually are. So you actually have to understand, why are we here? You cannot simply, we made a right turn instead of a left turn at Albuquerque. Well, you can't just say, well, let's just pretend we didn't. So there are practicalities in making those decisions, and those need to be better understood. And so if they are, better new decisions can be made, arguably. So backspace, this is final. Backspace and delete, those are keys on your keyboard. Unsending, editing that social media post, deleting it entirely. These are all fine, really, and are essentially a part of life in the modern era. You should be able to edit a document, and it's only for you. You're not sending it out to somebody yet until it's done. That homework assignment, whatever the case may be, the code you're writing, and much like the cookie recipe, if you're in your kitchen or at your desk, I believe you should be able to undo, redo, backspace, delete, get some new ingredients, try it over completely. In fact, try again. Isn't that what it is? Oh, when at first you don't succeed, try again. So there you go. Completely separate are the more substantial moves, going back in the way things were, which can be a fine choice. But if we're being completely honest, we can never go back. The future is up ahead, and it is the accumulation of mistakes made and lessons learned. That is how real life works. This entire episode was basically based on or inspired by, I suppose, this. I just keep hearing it more and more. And so I'm trying to watch less and less any discussions of the current state of affairs of the U.S. in the world, the leadership of the actually, and within the U.S. domestically. Horrible things happen because of stupid decisions, and we could just go back. And I have to say, now I know better. But through the years, especially when I was in Silicon Valley doing some, long days, many hours every day, weekend, that's just another day to go to work with less traffic on the streets. So there were times, you come home and you're tired, having thought about all this stuff all day. And I remember explicitly something, and in the TiVo era especially, I remember watching something on television or whatever, oh man, it would be so easy to just get imagining editing something that happened in a TV show context, but this reflexive notion, just go back and try that again or whatever. You can't, because time is actually moving, even in this fictional world that they're portraying here. You cannot go back. You cannot undo. There is no Control Z in the real world. So not that was a life-changing incident, but it does make me wonder sometimes when people think, oh yeah, we'll just go back to that, or we'll try it again. Well, you have to try it again, but you learned something the first try or whatever, the previous try or tries. So you have to apply all those things. And that was the learning part, right? If you're able to undo or redo or reset the scene, move the boxes back into place, then you can try again. But the idea is to learn from the previous mistakes. And I think some notions that you hear about, again, in the government scene, but we won't touch on that too much, other than we'll just undo all this stuff. We'll just remove the construction projects, and we'll undo the policy changes. Well, there's been damage done, and there's been decisions made that can only be made again in the opposite direction, and so on. So it's kind of disheartening to hear people talking about just going back, when in reality, you kind of have to just keep going forward, but learn from all of this. And will we? I doubt it. But I guess we'll find out. So yeah, check out buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo for links to all of my audio programs. Let's Innovate for Vegas, Quaggling Sand, this program, FFS Talk, and Cafe Genius Impresarios through the week. The Buy Me an Update audio program is published on Monday mornings, where morning can have various meanings. but usually Monday morning. It's a 5-minute or less audio program. It runs down the previous week's audio program topics and any news and announcements upcoming. Don't forget Coffee Solo. That's my unscheduled, unconstrained. I could talk about politics all day on that one, but I don't. That's usually, really, it's time wasted. But Coffee Solo could be anything, could be any length, could be any topic. It's right there in the name, solo. So it's just me talking. If anything comes to mind and it doesn't really fit into the topics or the general focal areas of the various other programs I produce, then there it is. And it's also preparation for some other stuff I'm trying to get going. Too many things on the to-do list. But do check out buymeacoffee.com. Coffee Solo and Buy Me a Coffee. Their homepages are my personal site, danhugo.com, which is, as everything else, in need of more attention. So hopefully you are enjoying this. We are putting together the Smarter Smart City Hackathon for a challenge. Hackathon is too constrained. Smarter Smart City Challenge. So that's taking up some brain cells, most definitely right now. You can find out more about all of these things, though. buymeacoffee.com/danhugo. Don't spend any money. You can just go there and click on links. There are affiliate links, like I said, at the top of the show. These are things I actually use, including my favorite coffee beans lately. So you can check those out. And then if you actually do want to buy me a coffee, you're more than welcome. All proceeds through that portal. And Ko-fi.com, by the way, where Coffee Solo is. These are named because I used to publish these only on, Buy Me an Update only on Buy Me a Coffee, Coffee Solo only on Ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com. But then I thought, you know what? These are podcast audio program episodes, and there's no RSS feed, and they're difficult to discover, and so on. So I said, all right, I'll continue to publish them there first, but then they get published through the usual methods. I think I've basically settled on 2 hours later. So there's 2-hour lead time. Anyway, I don't really use Ko-fi, ko-fi.com. I don't really use it for much. Maybe I should someday, but for the time being, it's just another way. So that's it. All right. Thanks for listening as always. And we'll see you next week on this program, and we'll see you through the week on my various audio programs, which now you know where to find all of them if you did not already. Cheers.